Hi everyone, Erica Marshall here, and welcome to this video on face charts. I will be walking you through the steps on how to create a beautiful face chart from start to finish. What you will discover while watching the video today are some tips and tricks, the recommended face chart supplies to complete a beautiful face chart, as well as the application steps. I often get asked, hey, why are face charts so beneficial? Why are you taking the time to put real makeup on paper versus a person? Well, this can be our first step to game planning your inspiration. Like myself, I have so many ideas in my head. I just want to get started because I'm so excited. But if I don't map out those ideas clearly, I'm not going to get the results that I'm going for. It also works well as a communication tool to provide direction to an artistic team for an event. This event could be a fashion show, a hair show, a wedding, or even a photo shoot. It works as a communication tool for a guest when discussing color placement and color selection specifically for that guest. So the guest walks in and you want to be able to provide them with information on what's going to work best for them due to their temperature and contrast. It also helps with your personal skills understanding placement, so where colors work best within that eye shape. So understanding your terminology of your brow bone, your crease, your eyelid, your tear duct. So it lets you map that all out so you understand where your color selections are going to live. So here's a little list I put together on some tips and tricks. Use standard paper. Versus watercolor paper or cardstock paper, I find standard paper works best. Stick to matte products. If you use products that have a little bit of grit to it, like shine or shimmer, they don't stick to the paper as well as a matte product does. Layer your colors working from your lightest colors to the darkest colors. If you do this, the colors will blend and transition easier. If you were to start with your darkest colors, it's harder to blend it out, and you need the lighter colors underneath so you can work with them as you begin to layer the colors on top of each other. The bigger the brush, the bigger the blend. So if you want a diffused application of color, you want a bigger brush. If you need a maximum amount of coverage, you're going to use a shorter, denser, smaller brush. Have one clean brush available to continue to blend the transition colors. So I always have one brush on hand that hasn't been used yet to help me blend and merge colors together if I need a little extra support. Typically use smaller, dense brushes for face chart. So you're not always going to use the same brushes that you might use on your guest because we're working with paper. So I find that I use more dense, small brushes because I want the coverage on the paper and I want to see that product. I like to use colored pencils for detail when it comes to the eyes, the lips, and the brows. And for mascara, I use liquid liner and a small pointed brush. So before we move forward with watching the video, I wanted to first do an overview of the step-by-step process that you're about to see. First, we're going to start by applying the foundation. To do this, I'm going to use a matte pressed powder. Blush is always optional. For the shadows, I'm going to use matte shadows with no grit, no texture, no shines, and no shimmers. For my transition color, this is going to be placed between the crease and the height of the brow bone. Next, I'll move on to the eyelid color by patting and pressing and repeating this step as needed. Then I will lay in my crease color. I will lay it on heavy with a small, dense brush. Then I will buff and blend into the transition color. Then we'll move on to the detail, which will exist in the tear duct, the lower lash line, and the liner. From there, it'll be the brow detail. I'll use pencil and then fill it in with pressed matte color, and then I'll detail the brow hairs. And for the lips, I'll line it with a colored pencil and then detail with a black pen for depth. Alright, so now let's take a look at the actual face chart video. You can see here a glance of some of the supplies that we'll be using today. Go ahead and grab your face chart and start by selecting a dense brush. This is a foundation brush that can be used for wet products or dry products. For face charts, we're going to stick to our dry products and we're going to select a foundation color that's light enough that we can build upon. Start by gliding your brush along the outside of the face design itself. So gliding along the edge so you have dark to light in the center. We're going to create a little bit more indentation within where depth would exist. So in the pocket under the cheekbone, the chin, and around the forehead area. I turn the face chart over just for ease of application on the opposite side. Now we're going to select a brush that is smaller and denser, same style of brush, to create a little bit more coverage where depth would exist. I'll select a color that is a little darker than the initial foundation color we started with. And then I will apply this in the chin area, so creating a little indentation there, and then the hollow of the cheek, in the forehead area, and then we'll use it to even create a little detail around the nose area. Now we will start our shadow application. I'm going to select a big fluffy brush. So we're going to work from the bigger brushes typically to a smaller brush. The bigger the brush, the bigger the blend. The smaller the brush, the more coverage you're going to get. We're going to select our lightest color of the day. This is important because all the colors that are going to go on top of this color, we need this color underneath so it blends and transitions well. We're going to apply this color on the entire eye area. So starting on the brow bone, through the brow area, through the crease and eyelid, and make sure that we have nice smooth coverage. It almost works like a primer. Now I'm going to switch over to a smaller brush, similar style, just smaller, and we're going to create what we call a transition color. A transition color helps blend a crease color and a highlight together. Therefore, you have proper transition between the two. We want everything to be smooth and blended out nicely. So this would be what's similar to like our pencil placement. So we're going to go ahead and apply that transition color, laying it above where the crease would exist, blending down towards the crease, leaving space between the transition and the highlight color. So you can see it's living right there, blending back and forth. This transition color can be a taupe color, meaning that it's not warm or cool, and it's just an aid for blending and transitioning later. So now I'm going to switch to even a smaller brush, and we're going to apply our eyelid color. By patting and pressing the color on first, this is going to allow the shadow to stick to the paper. Whenever I use the circular motions, then I'm blending and transitioning that color out. So this lives right on the eyelid, blending up towards that transition color area. I'm going to switch over to a brush that's clean. It hasn't been used yet, just to marry the two together so you get a nice smooth application. I will do this a lot by just keeping a clean brush on hand just to help with creating any blending that I need to afterwards with the colors that have already been applied on the paper. So now this is even a smaller, denser brush, and this is what I'm going to use to create the crease color. So applying it right where the crease would exist, again, creating little tiny circular motions to blend out the product. Now I switched over to a fluffier brush to again blend that out so you have a nice smooth application. You'll notice a lot of times the brushes we're using on paper wouldn't be the same brush that we would use on a guest. So it's specific to what's going to help create the coverage we need on the paper. So we're going to use a lot smaller brushes when creating face charts. So applying the eye detail by bringing that same crease color underneath. This is actually done with a lip brush. And then we're going to move on to the detail of the tear duct color. Same lip brush, so I just customized that white and that pink together. So we stay within the same family of colors. So blending out any edges that we see. From here, we'll move on to the eyeliner. So I'm using an actual liquid liner. Lives kind of like a magenta color. So once I get that product on my hand there, I'm going to switch over to an eyeliner brush, so it's small and pointy. And I'm going to start by applying on one side of the eye area, really smooth and slow motions right on that upper lash line. And then I will complete the line by starting on the opposite side of that upper lash line to create the connection. Working really slowly. Now I know we talked about not using liquid on paper. However, this is considered a liquid, but it's a small amount, so it's controlled. If you use large amounts of liquid, like if you were to use it to apply your foundation, it'll start to absorb into the paper and create an oily residue. But if it's small and controlled, then that is okay. Now let's go ahead and create a little detail in the eye area. So I selected a gray colored pencil. This will bring the eyes to life a little bit more. So it can look like it is more rounded and dimensional. So shade after you applied your line right around that iris area, and then you're going to place a small pink colored pencil color to create the detail that is necessary for a little tear duct. Once we've done this, I'm going to switch over to a black Uniball pen. I love this pen because it helps me create the detail that I want in the iris area, so it has a little bit more texture to it, a little bit more lifelike. And then from here, I like to fill in the iris with a color. You can do this with an eyeshadow or you can do it with colored pencil. I've chose today to do it with a colored pencil, working with a darker blue into a lighter blue and even a lighter color of blue. By taking this extra time to do these steps, it's really going to allow your face chart to come to life and look a little bit more realistic. These look wonderful for your face chart portfolio. So now I'm using a white cream pencil to create the detail that's necessary in the iris area. Again, just bringing it to life. And then we'll move on to creating our brows. When working with brows, I'm going to work with a matte shadow and an angled brush. So we don't want shiny brows or shimmery brows, so we're going to use a matte color. Apply the darkest color at the base of the brow. Then using vertical strokes, pull the color up so it blends out that hard edge really nice and soft. I will do this a lot on myself and my guests in real life. And then I'll move into the lightest color of our brow detail and place that right in the front. So they work from light to dark. We'll apply this same application on the opposite side, and then we'll move over to a brown colored pencil and we'll do additional details by creating these little flecks so it looks like actual brow hairs within the brow. So again, bringing your face chart to life on paper. All right, so now we're going to move on and do our lash detail. So using a ink pen, and then I like to use a little bit of water with it just to dilute it. Use a tiny eyeliner brush, it's really pointed, and create these little flicks. And you can see my wrist flick these little eyelash hairs on there so they look a little bit more natural. So gliding along the inside of the lash line and gently flicking out so they're nice and soft, where the depth of the color is living at the base of the lash line. I'll do this for a while and start to layer them so they look a little bit more realistic. Now let's move on to the lips. Grab a colored pencil, outline the lip area, and I like to keep a little gap in the center so they look more dimensional on paper. Once I've applied that colored pencil all over the lip area, I'm going to switch over to shadow. Cover the entire lip with a shadow application, starting with the darker colors on the outside. And I'll switch to a lighter pink color, go over the areas that I left open, and then move over to our black Uniball pen and create more depth around the outer corners of the lip area. And this again just brings the face chart to life a little bit more on paper. And by having those lighter centers, it's making the lip kind of pop off the paper and make it look a little bit more full than it really is. It's just creating an illusion. So apply the pencil on using my pinky to kind of smudge out that product as it sits there. Again, just taking the extra time to make it look a little bit more realistic. From here, you can choose to go back to that original foundation brush and add a little cheek color as an accessory. If you feel like your face chart needs a little bit more color theory, you can do that at this time. And after that, your face chart would be complete. You can see all the products that we used today. You can see the face chart design itself. You can see the colored pencils, the eyeshadow.